Hey everyone, Loomis here, and now that we've have Fenrir launched, I wanted to revisit my initial preview guide and make some updates to it. There were two things in particular that I said that were definitely incorrect, and there are a number of other things that I feel differently about for this fight, and wanted to get the information out there to help players achieve the highest score possible on this boss fight. So the first thing that I said incorrectly is actually the buff square, the unit that lands on it, it does not buff the entire team. It only buffs the unit that lands on it, so that's a very, very, very big change. It's very different than what actually happens. Now, this buff does last for 3 turns, so it's a very powerful buff nonetheless, and it still heals your team and everything, so all the other information is correct. It just does not buff the entire team with that buff. That would be way too overpowered, to be honest. So the other things that have changed is what we found out the numbers of some of these other buff squares. So the fixed damage buff square, instead of 400 to 500%, is actually 600 to 800%. So it's a little bit more, which is fantastic. Now, the one thing that you do want to make sure that you note is that the fixed damage square only works on single target attacks. So if you use a AoE attack and then have other follow-up fixed damage procs, it will not be buffed. So very important to note. And then the bottom 2 buff squares, they increase your magic or physical damage dealt by 40% on odd phases and 70% on even phases. But on the even phase, it will increase your damage taken, whatever damage you're getting buffed up. So if your magic damage is buffed, you will increase the magic damage you take by 30% on the unit on the buff square, and the rest of the team by 20%. So just something to watch out for. The AoE, especially the physical AoE from Fenrir, is very powerful, so I would highly recommend you never hop on the physical damage dealt square, because increasing that damage taken is going to be, possibly fatal, because the physical AoE already does so much damage. So now some changes on the characters that I recommended. So for Jugli here, I want to replace Defense Intimidate with Magic Defense Command. Now, Magic Defense Command, it helps Jugli's own damage through Beast Shock because it increases his magic defense and it converts, so it's going to result in a higher attack number. But it also increases the DPS of Bolzel and Listel if you're using them, because they are both characters that convert their intelligence from their match defense. So that's going to help your team defense overall. Also, should help you out a little bit with the magic AoE, but the magic AoE is the significantly less powerful one. Now, if your Jugler is a bit weaker, I think you should still run Defense Intimidate. Now, Defense Intimidate is often going to be redundant, because typically you're going to be running Bernhardt, and he's going to have Hegemony, which it replaces the Defense Intimidate debuff, because it's more powerful, so it overwrites it. But if your Jugler is weaker and he can't survive an attack, you may want to have the Defense Intimidate just so you can wait, and it still applies, potentially. The other thing that you might want to consider is that if you're running Defense Intimidate, you should probably replace Beast Shock with Master of Ice, because Master of Ice will still proc the Defense Intimidate and should still proc the Hellhounds as well if you're getting the damage up debuff, and you will find yourself in a position where you obviously can't die on a counterattack when you're AoEing an opponent. So that can buy you an extra turn in case you need it. So just something to consider. Now, the other thing that I've changed is that you should definitely run Swordsmith Metal if you have it on him, because that will give both flat defense and match defense, which is, very strong for Jugler if you're running Beast Shock. Then the boots, they give 8% defense. Having more life on Jugler is always nice, so I definitely think it's a recommendation, but I think the other items are going to be a little bit better, just DPS-wise. And the other thing to note is that his helm, I think, is actually mandatory, because even if your soldiers die, the heal proc from the helmet will show up before he applies the Hellhound debuff, and it will heal back his units. So as long as Jugler lives attacking, he will always have troops back up to apply the debuff from the Hellhounds onto the boss. So it's very important you have that. No other helm is going to recreate that for him, so make sure that you have the special helm. Alright, next, Altamuller here. I was very incorrect on him. Initially, I was like, why the hell would you bring this guy? And now I'm like, wow. I won't say he's mandatory, because you can definitely get an S rank without him. I've done that myself. But if you're going to leaderboard, I think he's definitely a core unit for that. You know, because he's insanely bulky. You know, last rights, he's never going to die. Defense command, it's incredible for your squishy units because the physical AoE is going to absolutely maul your mages. So, like, if you bring Lana or Ren, like, they're going to be the first to die just due to that physical AoE. So having the defense command is going to be tremendously helpful for those turns. He doesn't even need to bring an AoE attack because he can just sit there and spam, you know, multiple single target attacks. He's going to get his stacks pretty high, so he's just going to be, you know, a very, very, very powerful unit. His crown, if you do bring it and don't have it enchanted for steel for Sleipnir, is going to have 100% uptime on Windride. So there's just a number of benefits that I vastly overlooked with Ultimuller when I first did this video. And even if you have a regular crown as steel and you have a full steel set for him on Sleipnir, he's still going to do a good amount of damage and his tankiness will be off the charts. So definitely make sure that you have Ultimuller on your team if you're looking at leaderboard. I think he's a very important core unit for that. So next, Bernhardt here. I think the Apex boots definitely provide a significant amount of flexibility because it lets you hop onto the fixed damage tile. If, let's say, all your... Okay, so obviously Varna has no downtime on her AoEs, but let's say you're having Bolzel as the other unit to flip onto the AoE tile and his AoEs are on cooldown. Bernhardt definitely can walk over to the fixed damage tile and you can still get more use out of that tile than you would if you have a Bolzel on cooldowns. So he needs Apex boots for that. Now, if you run Breeze on Bernhardt, if you get a fortuitous Breeze proc on the exact turn you need it, you can run him over there no problem because the buff tile gives you +2 mobility, so you can run back with no issue. But that requires a lot of luck that I don't like requiring. Or relying on, sorry. So that could be dangerous. Now, as I mentioned before, the fixed damage buff does not apply on AoE. So if you Swords Dance, don't use Swords Dance basically when you have the fixed damage buff on you. And you should save Swords Dance because you're going to hit a point in the fight where your Titans are going to die. And Burn won't, so he'll still survive. But the Titans will no longer be strong enough to survive the attack, and they then will not apply their debuff. So on even phases, this can be extraordinarily detrimental. Now, I've also added in Frostrend instead of Balance Blade as a recommended equip, because if you get the Moby Down proc, that's a proc that you're probably not going to get from other places, so it's potentially another debuff that you're not getting. And I think Arcane Battle Garb is definitely the best armor, because at the end of the day, it gives an extra hit, especially if you're on the fixed damage tile, but it just gives an extra hit that you're otherwise not getting. So even if it only hits for like a few hundred damage a hit, a few hundred is better than 0. So it's all going towards your score. So if you have a Arcane Battle Garb that you have been using for maybe a Lanford, you can, obviously Lanford's not on this fight, so you can just toss it onto Burn for this fight. Because, for example, I run Burn in PvP, so I have an Aeolus on him. That's not useful for this fight at all. Arcane Battle Garb is. So, just something to consider. Now, for Listel, I'm actually thinking run Siphon on her, because it gives her an attacking skill at least, and it increases her damage. Now, Reaper's Touch is going to be a great option if you're having trouble with even phase debuffs, because it's a unique debuff, and because it's undispellable, even though Fenrir dispels all his debuffs at the beginning of the turn, he can't dispel undispellables, so it's going to last for 2 turns, so that's potentially extraordinarily useful. And you can also use Mindbore or Reapers on turns where, like Burn, her Lava Titans don't live, so you can extend the duration of your fighting because, you're going to be able to consistently get those debuffs back on. So, just some things to consider. Alright, so Ren. Ren's the other thing I got wrong. I don't have Ren. I've actually never used Ren, so I mistakenly thought that Annihilation dropped the recipient's magic defense to 0 for the rest of the turn. That is totally incorrect. It just does it for the 1 attack from Ren. So it's still useful, obviously, because, getting a strong hit in from Ren with a 0 match defense unit is going to do good damage, but it's not as OP as originally thought. And I really kind of went into Fenrir thinking that Ren was going to be an extraordinarily OP option for this fight. I think she's a good option. I think she is, if you're having trouble S ranking, she's very helpful for that. But I think her ceiling is quite low. And if you're trying to leaderboard, I think there's much better options to bring than her. Just because her damage is going to be always a little bit lacking on non-annihilation turns because she really has no damage mods. She just has intelligence mods. So that only gets you so far. So I don't love her for leaderboarding. Next, Bozal here. Now, I think Decay might be better than Black Hole just because the 3-turn cooldown is just significantly better. And it has a unique debuff, so you're guaranteed getting a debuff that you would not otherwise have, so that could be potentially very useful. And an interesting point that was brought up to me last night, thank you to Trisket for this, is that Blue Moon potentially might out DPS Miracle Staff here, because Miracle Staff only applies on AoEs, and unless you're having insane clock luck, you're probably going to be doing more hits where you're not AoEing, and the 5% magic defense, it applies obviously to single target attacks as well. So depending on your luck, a Blue Moon actually might be better than a Miracle Staff here. It depends. And I also flipped around Soul Stealer and Dark Crown here because honestly, the extra HP you get from Dark Crown, the extra chance to silence from Soul Stealer is probably more beneficial. And just a note, Speed Boots offers you nothing in terms of mobility on this fight that Bozal needs, so you can definitely feel safe to drop the Speed Boots if you happen to have a Veil of Light lying around for him. Now, if you don't have a Veil of Light for him, I wouldn't go out of my way to try and build one up because that's a lot of resources. However, it is a DPS increase, so something to consider. So, that's it for the video today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And as always, if there's any videos that you would like to see in the future, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any other questions about Fenrir, please also let me know in the comments. So, I will see you guys soon. Thank you again so much for watching.